I was never close to my father. Not really. Not in the way that daughters are supposed to be. But I never thought he'd erase me completely. Growing up, my father, Rick, was the kind of man who treated fatherhood like an obligation rather than a privilege. He provided, sure, paid the bills, made sure there was food on the table. But love? Warmth? Affection? Those were things I only read about in books. When my parents divorced, I was 13. My mother and I stood in the doorway, watching him pack his bags like he was checking out of a hotel rather than leaving his family behind. "You can visit any time," he said casually, like it was a suggestion, not a promise. But he never visited me. The calls became fewer, the excuses more frequent. Work is busy. Maybe next weekend. I learned not to expect him. I should have been used to the disappointment. I should have known better. But nothing prepared me for what happened the day I logged onto Facebook. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon. I had just finished cleaning my tiny apartment, one I had worked so hard for on my own, without a single bit of help from him. I stretched out on my couch, scrolling through my phone, mindlessly liking pictures of acquaintances, until there it was. A photo. A wedding photo. His wedding photo. Rick, standing beside a woman I had never met, grinning like he had just won the lottery. Her dress was elegant, champagne-colored, the kind that screamed expensive. She held on to him like they had been together forever, and standing right next to them were two teenagers. The caption? "My new family. Feeling blessed." My breath caught in my throat. My new family? I blinked. Maybe I read it wrong. But no, there it was. Plain as day. A celebration. A wedding. A life-changing event I hadn't even known about. I clicked on the album. Dozens of pictures. The ceremony, the reception, a cake, speeches, dancing. Everyone smiling. Everyone except me. Because I wasn't there. I wasn't even invited. My stomach churned, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I scrolled down, faster now, as if searching for some kind of mistake, some sign that I had imagined it. But the only message I found was one from a distant cousin. "Congrats, Uncle Rick. So happy for you and your beautiful family." Beautiful family, like I had never existed. A sharp, cold rage spread through me. He had replaced me. I should have seen it coming. A few weeks ago, he had called me for the first time in months. The conversation had been strange. "Hey, kiddo," he had said, using a nickname that no longer fit. "I just wanted to let you know I'm getting married. Nothing big, just a small celebration. You know, just the two of us. Just the two of them." I had swallowed down my hurt and told myself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe it was a quiet courthouse wedding. Maybe it really was small. Nothing fancy. But this wasn't small. This was planned, organized, and full of people. People who mattered to him. People who weren't me. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. My own father had thrown a wedding and deliberately excluded me. But not our kids. Not his new stepchildren. No, they got front row seats. They got cake and laughter and family. I felt the tears sting, but I refused to let them fall. Not for him. Not anymore. I took a shaky breath, forcing myself to think. What now? I could ignore it. Pretend I hadn't seen it. Pretend I didn't care. But I did care. And if he thought he could replace me so easily, erase me like an old photo in a forgotten album, he was about to learn that I wasn't so easy to forget. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. It wasn't just that he had gotten married. It was that he had chosen to erase me. There was only one way to find out why. I pressed call. The line rang once, twice, then, "Tessa?" His voice was calm, casual, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just cut me out of his life and replaced me. "Hey, Dad," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Congratulations." There was a pause. The kind of pause that told me he hadn't expected me to know. Hadn't wanted me to know. "Oh, thanks, kiddo." Kiddo, the same nickname he used when I was little, when I still thought he was the kind of dad who cared. I saw the pictures, I continued, letting the weight of my words settle. Looked like a beautiful ceremony. Must have been nice to have your whole family there. Another pause. This one longer. Tessa, I thought you said it was just the two of you. I cut in, my voice sharp now. That's what you told me, right? Small. Just you and her. It was small, he said quickly, almost defensively. Just a few close friends and her kids. Her kids. Not his kids, not me. So her kids got to be there? Got to celebrate with you? But your actual daughter, your own blood, didn't? He exhaled loudly, a familiar sound. The sound he made when he didn't want to deal with something. Tessa, listen. I didn't think you'd want to come. I blinked. You didn't think I'd want to come? My voice shook now, not with sadness, but with pure disbelief. Since when do you get to decide that for me? It wasn't like that, he muttered. I didn't want things to be awkward. Your mother and I... Oh, don't you dare bring Mom into this. I snapped. She has nothing to do with your decision to leave me out. That was all you. Silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, searching for a way out. A way to justify the unjustifiable. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said finally, his voice softer. I've moved on, Tessa. I have a new family now. There it was. The words that confirmed everything I already knew. I was no longer a part of his life. Right, I said, my throat tight. So when you said my new family on Facebook, you meant it literally. I'm not in the picture anymore, am I? That's not what No, I get it, Dad. My voice was cold now, emotionless. You replaced me, and that's fine, but don't expect me to act like it didn't happen. He sighed again. Tessa, I don't want to fight with you. Neither do I said, but I want you to remember this moment, because it's the last time you'll ever get to pretend that what you did was okay. Tessa? I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt clear-headed for the first time in years. This wasn't just about a wedding. This wasn't even about me not getting an invitation. This was about years of neglect finally catching up to him. He thought I would just accept it, that I would move on and let it go, like I had every other time he disappointed me. But not this time. This time, he was going to feel exactly what it was like to be shut out. This time, I had the power, and I knew exactly what my next move would be. I wasn't the type to seek revenge, or at least, I never thought I was. But as I sat in my apartment, staring at the wedding photos I hadn't been a part of, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about a single betrayal. It was about years of being treated like an afterthought, like I was nothing more than a loose end from his past life. Well, he was about to learn that I wasn't so easy to forget. I took a deep breath and started typing. Congratulations on your wedding, Dad. Wishing you and your new family all the happiness in the world. Since I wasn't invited, I'll celebrate from afar, just like you always made me do growing up. Hope your stepkids appreciate the father they got, since I never had one. Cheers. I hovered over the post button, my heart racing. I wasn't usually this bold, this confrontational, but something about the way he had wiped me out of his life made me feel like I had nothing left to lose. And then, post. Within seconds, notifications started rolling in. Likes, comments, shares. Then came the messages. Some were from family members who had no idea I wasn't invited. Wait, you weren't there? Tessa, is this real? Why would he do that? I thought it was just a small ceremony. He made it seem like no one was there. Others were from his side of the family, trying to justify it. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe he thought you'd be busy. Don't air family drama online. It's not a good look. And then, the notification I had been waiting for. Rick commented on your post. I clicked on it so fast I almost dropped my phone. Tessa, can we talk? Please call me. I stared at the words. Just hours ago, I had been nothing to him. Now, suddenly, I was important enough to control the damage. For the first time in my life, I had his full attention. But I wasn't finished yet. I clicked on his Facebook page and scrolled through the wedding photos again. The smiling faces, the picture-perfect moment, the family I wasn't part of. And then I saw it, a comment from his boss. What a beautiful family, Rick. Wishing you and your kids all the best. Kids, plural. His boss thought I was part of this, that we were a happy, blended family. That was the final straw. I replied directly under the comment. Actually, I wasn't invited to the wedding. Rick decided his stepkids were more important than his actual daughter. Just thought you should know. A public reply. A message that couldn't be ignored. I could almost hear my father's reaction. The tension in his jaw. The way he'd rub his temples, trying to figure out how to contain the mess he'd made. But this time, there was no hiding it. Minutes later, my phone rang. Dad. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then voicemail. A text popped up immediately after. Tessa, please call me. We need to talk. For once, he was the one chasing me, and I wasn't ready to make it easy. I put my phone down, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. My dad had spent years pushing me aside, treating me like an obligation he could ignore. Now, he was going to find out exactly what it felt like to be left out. And I wasn't done yet. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, calls, voicemails. All from him. For years, I had been the one waiting for him to notice me, to reach out, to make an effort. And now? Now, he was the one desperately trying to get a response. I let him stew in it. But I wasn't done yet. Because if my father thought he could bury me in the past, erase me like an old mistake, he was about to find out I was very much still here. And I had one more card to play. It was 2 days later when I finally picked up his call. Tessa. He sighed in relief, his voice breathless, like he'd been holding it in. We need to talk. Do we? I said flatly. Because I figured you'd be too busy with your new family to care. He groaned. Come on, you know that's not fair. Fair. That word nearly made me laugh, like he had ever been fair to me. Enlighten me, Dad. What exactly isn't fair? That I wasn't invited to your wedding? That you never even planned to tell me? Or that I found out on Facebook like some distant acquaintance? He hesitated. I could hear him pacing on the other end. Look, it wasn't intentional, Tessa. I didn't mean to hurt you. I let out a sharp breath. Then explain it to me, Dad. Explain why I wasn't good enough to be there, but her kids were front and center. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. Because I didn't want to deal with it. My stomach twisted. He didn't want to deal with it? Deal with what? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. I knew it would be complicated, he admitted. I knew there were feelings, history. I thought maybe if I kept it small, kept it separate, I wouldn't have to juggle everything. I wouldn't have to make you and your stepmom feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. That word hit me like a slap. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You didn't invite me because you didn't want things to be awkward? For her? It wasn't just about her, Tessa. Then who was it about? Because it sure as hell wasn't about me. Silence. That was the moment I knew. He hadn't just forgotten me. He had deliberately chosen to exclude me. Because it was easier. Because it was convenient. Because I didn't fit into the picture-perfect life he was building. Wow, I breathed. You know, I expected a bad excuse. But this is pathetic. Tessa, please, no, you listen to me for once. I gripped my phone, my knuckles white. You have spent years making me feel like I don't matter. like I was just some reminder of a life you wanted to forget. And you know what? Fine. You wanted me out of the picture? Congratulations. You got your wish. But don't you dare call me now, acting like you care. Tessa, that's not what I want. It's exactly what you want. I snapped. You just didn't expect people to see you for who you really are? He exhaled heavily. I could hear the weight in his breath, the frustration. He wasn't used to me standing up for myself. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. You can't. Silence. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up, and this time I meant it. That night, I got another notification. Rick deleted his wedding photos. I smirked. Too little, too late, because no matter how much he tried to erase the proof, the damage was already done. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No more waiting for him to call. No more hoping he would finally see me as his daughter. No more pretending that his absence didn't hurt. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I wasn't looking back. But life has a funny way of testing your resolve. Because just when I thought I was done with Rick, he came crawling back. It started with an email. I wasn't expecting it. After our last conversation, I assumed he would disappear, bury himself in his new family, and pretend I never existed, just like he had always done. But the subject line made my stomach twist. We need to talk. I hesitated before opening it. Tessa, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I don't want to leave things like this. I made a mistake, and I should have handled things differently. Can we meet? Just once? I owe you that much. Dad. I stared at the words, waiting for something to change inside me. Some part of me had always longed to hear those words, to hear him admit that he was wrong, that he should have treated me better. But now that I had them, they meant nothing. I closed the email without responding. I had nothing left to say. The second time he reached out, it was through my mother. I was in the middle of folding laundry when my phone rang. I smiled when I saw her name pop up. Hey, Mom. Tessa, honey, I need to talk to you about something. I immediately picked up on the hesitation in her voice. What's wrong? She sighed. Your father called me. I froze. And? I said, already bracing myself. He wants to see you. I closed my eyes, gripping the fabric in my hands. Mom, no. Tessa, just listen. No, I repeated, firmer this time. You don't get it. He didn't just forget to invite me to his wedding. He chose to leave me out. He's been choosing to leave me out for years. She was quiet for a moment. I know, sweetheart. And I don't blame you for how you feel. I waited for the but I think he's scared. I let out a bitter laugh. Scared? Of what? Losing me? He already did. Tessa, people don't always realize what they have until it's too late. Maybe he's finally starting to understand that. I could hear the hope in her voice, the same hope I had carried for years. But I wasn't that little girl anymore, waiting by the window for my father to show up. Mom, I love you, but this isn't your battle. He made his choice, and now he has to live with it. She sighed. I understand, sweetheart. I don't want you to have regrets. I won't, I said, and this time I meant it. A week passed, then 2. I thought I was done with him. And then he showed up at my door. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted from a long day, when I heard the knock. Firm, familiar. My stomach twisted as I looked through the peephole. Rick. I hesitated. I could ignore him. Pretend I wasn't home. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe a lingering shred of anger, made me unlock the door. I swung it open, my expression cold. What do you want? He looked older than I remembered. Tired, worn down. His once confident posture had shrunk like he had been carrying too much weight for too long. Tessa, he said, forcing a small, hesitant smile. Can I come in? I stared at him for a long moment. Then, finally, no. Rick stood in my doorway, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. The same man who once seemed so unreachable, so distant, now looked like a man who had run out of places to hide. Tessa, please, just let me explain. I crossed my arms. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. Explain what? I asked, my voice steady. That you didn't want me at your wedding? That you made an entirely new family and left me out of it? That I only mattered once I made you look bad? He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. He wasn't used to this version of me. I deserve that, he admitted. I know I do. I raised an eyebrow. That was new. Then why are you here? His shoulders dropped, like he had finally realized there was no script to get him out of this. Because I lost you, he said simply. For the first time, something about his voice sounded genuine. I don't know when it happened, he continued, shaking his head. Maybe after the divorce, maybe before that. But somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that you'd be fine without me, that you didn't need me. And I let that belief turn into an excuse. His words should have mattered. Years ago, they would have mattered. But now, I wasn't sure if they changed anything. And the wedding? I asked. Was that just another excuse? He swallowed hard. That was a mistake. A big one. I should have wanted you there, Tessa. I should have fought for you. And I didn't. I know I can't take that back, but I just needed you to know that I regret it. I let his words hang in the air. Regret? That's all it was. Not love. Not a desire to fix things. Just regret. And regret wasn't enough. So what now? I asked, watching him closely. You say your piece, and then what? You want me to forgive you? Pretend none of this ever happened? No, he said quickly. I know I don't deserve that. He hesitated, searching for the right words. I just don't want the last thing between us to be anger. I stared at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing at all, because I had already grieved the loss of my father a long time ago. He was only now realizing what I had known for years. We were done. I'm not angry, I said, my voice calm. Not anymore. Relief flickered across his face, but I wasn't finished. But I'm also not interested in fixing this. His relief shattered. Tessa, come on. No, I interrupted, shaking my head. You don't get to walk away for years and then decide you want back in when it's convenient for you. That's not how family works. That's not how love works. His lips pressed into a thin line like he wanted to argue. But what could he say? He had no defense. I hope you're happy with your new family, I said, stepping back inside. But I won't be a part of it. He opened his mouth, maybe to say something, maybe to beg. But I shut the door before he had the chance. And just like that, I let him go. That was the last time I saw my father. At first, he kept trying. More emails, more calls, but I didn't answer. He had already taught me how to live without him, and I was finally ready to move forward. Without him. Without his regret. Without waiting for a love that was never going to come. Because I had spent my whole life chasing a father who never chased me back. I was done running. I should have seen it coming. The way my father's voice turned sharp when he spoke to me. The way my mother's eyes darted away when I entered the room. The way my siblings whispered behind my back, their laughter fading the moment I got close. But somehow I still wasn't ready. Not for the moment when my father, the man who was supposed to protect me, looked me in the eye and said, "You never brought anything good to this family." The words landed like a fist to my gut. My breath hitched, and for a second I swore the ground beneath me tilted. I was standing in the middle of the living room, our family's living room, but I suddenly felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong. My mother stood beside my father, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. My younger brother sat on the couch, arms draped lazily over the backrest, watching the scene unfold like it was some cheap drama. My older sister Stephanie scrolled on her phone, barely interested. I swallowed hard. Dad, what are you talking about? His face twisted as if the question itself was offensive. I mean exactly what I said, Alyssa. He sighed like I was exhausting him. You've never contributed anything to this family. You're a burden, a waste of time. A waste of time. I had to remind myself to breathe. Is this because I don't have a high-paying job yet? My voice was calm, but inside, my heart pounded against my ribs. I had been working so damn hard. Long hours, side hustles, learning everything I could. I was building something they knew nothing about. But to them, it didn't matter. My mother finally spoke. It's not just about the money, Alyssa. It's about you. You've always been difficult. Difficult. The word stung more than I expected. Oh, you mean difficult as in not doing everything you say? Difficult as in trying to live my own life instead of being your personal servant? My father's jaw clenched. Watch your tone. I let out a sharp breath, my hands curling into fists at my sides. I work hard. I'm responsible. I've never asked you for anything. And yet, you still bring nothing of value, my father said. Look at Stephanie. She has a stable career. Look at Michael. He's got his life figured out. But you? You're wasting your time chasing things that will never amount to anything. I glanced at my sister, who still hadn't looked up from her phone. She had a stable career, sure, but only because Dad pulled strings for her. And Michael? He had his life figured out because he never had to work for a single thing. Everything had been handed to him. But me? I had built everything on my own. And yet, in their eyes, I was nothing. My father shook his head. We've given you every opportunity, and you've thrown them away. We're done wasting time on you. I stared at him, my breath coming in slow, measured beats. So, what are you saying? My father folded his arms. We're saying we're done. My mother exhaled, like this was some weight off her shoulders. You should leave, Alyssa. My heartbeat slowed. For a long second, the room blurred, the voices around me fading into a dull hum. They were serious. This wasn't just anger. This wasn't an empty threat. They were disowning me. For a moment, my mind flashed back to all the years I had tried to earn their approval. The late nights spent helping my mother when she was overwhelmed. The times I stayed up comforting my sister when her relationships fell apart. The money I had loaned my brother when he was reckless with his spending. None of it mattered. To them, I had never mattered. I straightened my shoulders. I wasn't going to beg. All right? My father raised an eyebrow. All right? Yeah, I said, voice steady. I'll leave. For the first time, my sister looked up from her phone. My brother blinked, like he hadn't expected me to actually go through with it. Even my mother hesitated, her fingers tightening slightly around her wrist. But I didn't give them time to take it back. I turned around, walked to the front door, and placed my hand on the knob. And then, I looked over my shoulder. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of them. You'll regret this. My father scoffed. Don't be dramatic. I almost laughed. They had no idea. They didn't know that the past few years I had been building something. Something of my own. They didn't know about the business I owned in secret. They thought they were cutting me off. But in reality, I was cutting them off. I stepped outside, the cold air hitting my skin, and I walked away. For the first time in my life, I felt free. And 2 years later, they came begging. Walking away was the easy part. What came after? That was the real test. I left my parents' house that night with nothing but a single suitcase and the weight of their rejection pressing against my chest. No job lined up. No safety net. No idea what the hell I was going to do next. But I had one thing. Determination. And of course, my secret business. It wasn't much. just an online store I had been running in the background for the past 2 years. I had started it as a side hustle, pouring whatever spare time I had into it. At first, it had been slow, barely making me anything. But over time, I figured out how to market, how to sell, how to scale. And now, it was small, but it had potential. And I was about to bet everything on it. The first few months were brutal. I crashed on my best friend Rachel's couch for weeks while I figured things out. I picked up freelance gigs, worked late into the night, barely scraped by. Some nights I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if my father was right. Maybe I really was a failure. Maybe I really would amount to nothing. But every time that doubt crept in, I reminded myself I wasn't going to prove him right. So I worked, harder than I ever had before. I poured every waking moment into growing my business. I studied marketing strategies, refined my products, expanded my network. And slowly, things started changing. Sales picked up, customers came back, the numbers grew. And then, one day, just 6 months after I had walked away from my so-called family, I checked my bank account and saw something I had never seen before. A 5-figure balance. For the first time in my life, I wasn't struggling. I wasn't just surviving. I was winning. By the end of that first year, my little side hustle had turned into a real company. I moved out of Rachel's place and into my own apartment. A beautiful, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. I bought myself the things I had always wanted but could never afford. And best of all, I did it on my own. No handouts, no shortcuts, no family. But even then, even after all of that, I still felt their words in the back of my mind. You never brought anything good to this family. I wanted to forget them. I wanted to erase them from my life. But something inside me wouldn't let go, because deep down I knew. One day they would come back. And when they did, I would be ready. I was 2 years in when the first message arrived. A simple text from an unknown number. Dad. Alyssa, we need to talk. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. For 2 years, I had heard nothing from them. No birthday messages, no check-ins, not even a cold, passive-aggressive text from my mother. But now they needed something. I ignored it. A week later, another message. Mom, it's important. Please call us. Please. That word almost made me laugh. Now they wanted to be polite? Still, I didn't respond. But then a phone call, and another, and finally a voicemail. My mother's voice, shaky, almost unrecognizable. Alyssa, please, we're struggling. Your father lost his job. The house, it's in danger. We don't know what to do. I sat there listening, my heart hammering in my chest. They were losing everything. The same people who had looked me in the eyes and told me I was worthless. The same people who had thrown me away like I was nothing. And now, they were begging me for help. I took a slow breath, tapping my fingers against the table. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt something. But all I felt was satisfaction. They thought they could tear me down. They thought I would fail. But they had no idea who they had been up against. I reached for my phone, hovering over the call button. Not yet. Let them sweat. Let them feel what it's like to be powerless, because the next time I spoke to them, it would be on my terms. I let them wait. For 2 weeks, I ignored the messages, the missed calls, the voicemails piling up. Every day, I watched as my phone lit up with desperate attempts from the same people who once told me I wasn't worth their time. It was poetic, really. I had spent years craving their approval, bending over backward, trying to be enough, trying to fit into a mold they had created for me. And now they were the ones waiting on me. I had the power, and I was going to use it. Finally, after the 15th voicemail from my mother, this one on the verge of tears, I decided it was time. Time for them to hear my voice. Time for them to understand exactly who they had thrown away. I called back, and the moment my mother answered, she sucked in a sharp breath. Alyssa. Her voice was small, weak. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the city skyline from my office window. My office. In a building I owned, built from my success. Took you long enough? I said. She hesitated. We weren't sure you'd answer. I wasn't sure either. A heavy pause. Then she cleared her throat. Alyssa, things have been difficult. Your father, he lost his job. I know. My voice was flat, emotionless, a sharp inhale. Who told you? I almost laughed. It's amazing what you can learn when people start crawling back into your life. She sighed, but there was no anger in her voice, just exhaustion. Alyssa, we need your help. Do you? I mused. Because 2 years ago, you made it clear that I was nothing to this family. A burden, a waste of time. So why would you want my help now? Silence. And then a broken whisper. We were wrong. I felt those words, heavy in the air between us. Wrong. For the first time in my life, my mother was admitting it. But was it real? Or just desperation? She kept talking, her voice trembling as she laid it all out. Dad lost his job 6 months ago. The severance package ran out quickly. Bills started piling up. Stephanie got laid off. And Michael? Well, he never had to struggle a day in his life, so naturally, he had nothing to offer. The family was crumbling. And I was their last hope. I should have felt bad. I should have felt something. But all I felt was the bitter taste of irony. Now I was valuable. Now I was worth something. I let her finish her story before I spoke. And Dad? What does he have to say? She hesitated. He wants to talk to you. I almost laughed. This was the same man who had looked me in the eye and told me I was worthless. The same man who had kicked me out of the house without a second thought. And now he wanted to talk? Interesting. I exhaled. Put him on. There was a shuffling sound, muffled voices, and then... Alyssa. My father's voice, stern but different. Not as sharp, not as condescending, weaker. I let the silence drag before responding. Dad. Another pause. Then, we need your help. There it was. No sugarcoating, no false pleasantries, just a direct plea from a man who once saw me as nothing. I gathered that. He sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. I know you're angry. Angry? I let out a short laugh. I don't think angry is the right word. But sure, let's go with that. Another silence. Then he exhaled sharply, his voice lowering into something almost apologetic. We made mistakes. Mistakes. As if what they did was some small error in judgment. As if throwing me away like garbage was just a bad decision they regretted later. I wasn't going to let them get away with that. No, Dad. You didn't just make mistakes. You made a choice. The words hit hard. I could hear it in his breathing, the way it suddenly hitched like he wasn't expecting me to be so blunt. You chose to push me out. You chose to cut me off. And now? You're only calling because you have no other option. More silence. Then, finally, I was wrong. A confession. A rare moment of vulnerability from the man who had spent his entire life acting like he was superior to everyone else. And yet, even now I could hear it in his tone. This wasn't regret. It was survival. They didn't miss me. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were just desperate. And that was what made this moment so perfect. I took a slow breath, letting the power settle into my bones. Then I smiled. I'll think about it. And then I hung up. I knew they would call again. I had barely hung up when my phone buzzed with another incoming call. My father, then my mother, then my sister. I let them all go to voicemail. Let them sweat. For 2 years, I had been nothing to them. And now they were desperate. That kind of power? It was intoxicating, but I wasn't just going to enjoy the moment. I was going to use it. Because this wasn't about money. This was about making them understand. I waited another 2 days before responding. When I finally picked up, my mother's breath hitched, like she hadn't expected me to call back. "Alyssa," she whispered, relief flooding her voice. "I've been thinking." She went silent, waiting. "I'll help you." The words dropped like a bomb. "You, what?" My mother's voice cracked. "I'll help you," I repeated, cool and measured, "but on my terms." She fumbled with her words. "Of course, yes, anything, Alyssa. We just need—" "I want a meeting," I cut in. "Face to face. You, Dad, Stephanie, and Michael. No excuses." A pause. Then, "Okay." I didn't meet them at their house. I made them come to me. A sleek, upscale restaurant downtown, one that required reservations weeks in advance. One they would never have been able to afford in their current situation. When I walked in, I saw them immediately. They were uncomfortable. My mother's hands were folded tightly on the table, her eyes darting around like she didn't belong. My father sat stiffly, his jaw tight, his pride barely holding together. Stephanie looked irritated, tapping her nails against the table. Michael was slouched in his chair, quiet for once. When I took my seat, I felt it. The shift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider. They were. I placed my phone on the table, letting the silence stretch before speaking. "Let's cut to the chase." My father's jaw ticked. "Alyssa, I held up a hand. "Number you, listen." His mouth snapped shut. Power. I could get used to this. "You need money." I stated it plainly. No pity, no sympathy, just facts. My father exhaled sharply, nodding. "We just need some help getting back on our feet," my mother said, her voice soft, careful. "Alone. We'll pay you back, of course." I smiled. "You must think I'm an idiot." My father flinched. My sister's mouth parted slightly. "You want my money?" I leaned forward, voice calm but firm. "Then I want something in return." My father frowned. "Alyssa, we're your family." "You stopped being my family when you threw me out." A sharp silence. Stephanie scoffed. "Are you seriously holding a grudge? It was years ago." I turned to her, leveling her with a cold stare. "If you lost everything tomorrow, would you expect me to help you?" She hesitated. "Well, yeah." "Why?" She blinked. "Because we're family." I smirked. "Exactly." I let the words settle before leaning back. "And yet, when I had nothing, you left me in the cold." Stephanie had nothing to say to that. "I'll give you the money," I said finally. My mother let out a shaky breath of relief. My father's shoulders sagged slightly. "But," I continued, "there are conditions." My father's face darkened. "Alyssa, we're not here to make a deal." "Then leave." I gestured toward the door. "Go find someone else to beg." Silence. He didn't move. Of course he didn't, because they had no one else. I folded my hands on the table. "Here's how this works. I don't do loans. If I give you money, I own something in return." My father tensed. "Own? Own what?" I shrugged. "Your house." My mother gasped. "Alyssa, no. You need money and I need investments. So here's the deal. I'll buy the house. At a fair market price. You can stay in it. For now. But you'll pay me rent. And if you ever default?" I tilted my head. "You leave." Shock. They didn't expect this. They thought I would just hand over money like some naive little girl still desperate for their love. Not anymore. My father's hands clenched into fists. "This is ridiculous." I smiled. "Then find another option." He said nothing, because there was no other option. My mother swallowed hard. "We need time to think." I stood up, grabbing my bag. "Take all the time you want, but the deal expires in 24 hours." My father's jaw tightened. My sister glared. My brother stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the table. I took one last look at them. The same people who once discarded me like trash. Now, they were at my mercy, and I was enjoying every second of it. I walked out without looking back. I knew they wouldn't take the deal easily. Pride is a funny thing. It keeps people from asking for help when they need it the most. And in my father's case, it made him want to die on a hill rather than admit that I had the upper hand. So, I wasn't surprised when 24 hours passed, and I didn't hear a word. Not a single call, not a single message, nothing. But I knew them, and I knew that silence wasn't surrender. It was resistance. A final attempt at holding on to the scraps of control they had left. What they didn't know? I had already planned for this. 2 days later, my mother finally called. "Alyssa, we need to talk." I smirked. I figured you'd say that. She hesitated. "Can we meet?" "No." A pause. "What?" "We already met," I said smoothly. "I gave you the deal. It's not my job to chase you for an answer." I heard the exhaustion in her sigh. "Your father," she started, then stopped. "What about him?" I asked. "He doesn't want to take the deal." I laughed. Of course he didn't. "Then what does he expect?" I said, amused. "For me to just give him the money out of the kindness of my heart?" Silence, which told me everything. I let out a sharp breath. Wow, he really doesn't get it, does he? "Alyssa, please." "No." My voice was firm, final. "I don't owe him anything. If he doesn't want to take the deal, then he can figure out another way to pay his bills." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, "Alyssa, he's sick." I went still. Sick. The word hung between us, heavy and unexpected. "What do you mean, sick?" My mother sighed, the exhaustion deepening in her voice. "He hasn't told anyone outside of the family, but he was diagnosed last year. Heart condition. It's getting worse." I blinked. For a moment, my mind raced, trying to process the information, trying to decide if it mattered. Because this was still the same man who had kicked me out. The same man who had told me I was worthless. The same man who was too proud to take my offer because it meant admitting that he needed me. Now, I was supposed to feel bad for him? I exhaled slowly. "And why are you telling me this now?" "Because maybe..." She hesitated, her voice breaking slightly. "Maybe you'll understand why it's so hard for him to accept help from you." I closed my eyes. There it was. The same old excuse. The same old way my mother had always justified his behavior. "He's just stressed. He just wants what's best for us. You know how he is." I clenched my jaw. "So let me get this straight. He's willing to lose everything. His house, his stability, his dignity, because his ego won't let him accept my help?" She hesitated. "It's not that simple." "No, Mom," I said, my voice sharp. "It is, and it's pathetic." Her breath hitched. I wasn't going to soften it for her. Not anymore. "He has 24 hours, I said finally, "to take the deal. After that, I'm not interested anymore." "Alyssa, no." I cut her off. If his pride is more important than his family, then that's on him. I hung up, and this time I didn't wait for a call back. The next day, I got the text. Not from my mother, not from my father. From Stephanie. "Stephanie." Dad signed the papers. I let out a slow breath. South. That was it then. After fighting tooth and nail, after acting like he would rather die than admit he needed me, he finally gave in. I had won, and I should have felt triumphant. But instead, I felt nothing. Not joy, not satisfaction, just cold, empty victory. We met one last time, this time in my lawyer's office. The house was now legally mine. The deal was in writing. My father refused to look at me as he signed the final documents. His jaw was tight, his signature rough and angry on the paper. My mother looked exhausted, her shoulders sagging in defeat. And my siblings? They were quiet, because this was the moment they realized I wasn't the same Alyssa they had discarded. I had outgrown them. I had surpassed them. And now, I owned everything they had left. A week after the papers were signed, I got another text. From Michael. Michael, Dad isn't doing well. You should come by. I stared at the screen for a long time, because for the first time I realized I had everything I had ever wanted. The power, the success, the control, and yet, I wasn't sure if I had won it all. I sat in my office staring at the text from Michael. Dad isn't doing well. You should come by. For the past 2 years, I had waited for this moment. The moment when my family would need me. When they would realize I was the one they should have valued all along. And now that it had happened, I didn't feel how I thought I would. I thought I would feel satisfaction, a twisted sense of justice, maybe even the final, ultimate victory. But instead, all I felt was tired. Because winning had come at a cost. I had spent years fighting for their approval, then years fighting to prove I didn't need it. I had built my life from nothing, carved out my success with my own 2 hands. And now, here I was, holding all the power, holding their future in my hands. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted it. I drove back to the house where I once lived. It looked different now, smaller, worn down. The yard was overgrown, the paint peeling at the edges. Or maybe it had always been this way, and I was just seeing it with different eyes. I knocked. The door opened slowly, and my mother stood there, eyes widening in surprise. Alyssa, she whispered. I didn't say anything, just stepped inside. The living room looked the same. The couch, the old curtains, the photos on the walls. Except now it wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. And they all knew it. I walked past my mother without a word and into the hallway, toward my father's room. When I stepped inside, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring out the window. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Weaker. For a man who had once towered over me, whose words had cut me down like knives, he suddenly looked like nothing, just a tired, sick man. He turned his head slightly, noticing me. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, softly, So, you finally came. I crossed my arms. You didn't think I would? A dry chuckle. Didn't think you'd waste your time. I exhaled slowly, watching him. That's funny. 2 years ago, you told me I was the one wasting time, that I had nothing to offer. His lips pressed together. He knew what I was doing. I wanted him to admit it, to say it out loud. But instead, he just sighed. I suppose you're here to gloat. I tilted my head. Would it matter if I was? His expression darkened. And for a second, just a second, I saw the old version of him. The man who had disowned me, who had stood in this very house and told me I was nothing. But that man didn't exist anymore. Now, he was just a shell. And I realized then I didn't need to win, because I already had. And I was done fighting ghosts. I stepped forward, placing a piece of paper on the nightstand beside him. He glanced at it, frowning. What's this? The deed to the house, I said simply. I signed it over to Mom. His head snapped toward me, eyes widening. What? I shrugged. You wanted it? It's yours. You'll just have to figure out the rest on your own. I turned, walking toward the door. Wait. I paused. His voice was different now. Not angry, not arrogant, just broken. Why? He asked. I didn't turn around. Because I don't need this anymore. Alyssa. I turned slightly, my gaze meeting his. You spent your whole life thinking power meant control, that it meant keeping people small so you could feel big. I took a slow breath. But real power? Real power is knowing you don't have to prove anything anymore. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. I didn't wait for him to find them. I walked out of the room, out of the house, and out of their lives. For good. I drove home that night, rolling down the windows, letting the cool air rush against my skin. For years, I had thought revenge would fix things, that if I made them suffer, it would make up for all the pain they had caused me. But the truth? They were already suffering. Not because of me, but because of who they were. Because their pride had kept them small. Because their choices had made them miserable. And I had everything I had ever wanted. A life of my own. A future that didn't include them. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Free. Because I wasn't my past. I wasn't their mistake. I wasn't their failure. I was my own victory. And that was enough.